Hi everybody, this is Ruth from Everyday Yarnworks, and I wanted to make a video for crocheters who are interested in learning how to knit. I've noticed a lot in the crocheting community, there's kind of this thought of knitting takes longer and knitting is slower, and if I've already learned how to crochet, can I learn how to knit? And oh my gosh, this is so hard. And because I'm somebody who's done both from a really young age, I wanted to be able to make a video to help you guys if you're interested in maybe learning how to knit, to introduce it from a crocheting standpoint so you can have a little bit of a frame of reference, and maybe it'll make your life a little bit easier as you check out knitting. So what I'm gonna, before I keep going, I should say, with that in mind, if you're somebody who has never knitted or crocheted before, this is probably not the video for you, because I'm gonna assume that you have a little bit of that crochet knowledge coming into knitting. So I assume going into this video that you know how to do things like make a slip knot, or that you already know how to hold your yarn in your hand. You have a way of it that's comfortable for you. So in this video, we're going to learn how to do something called a cast on, which is how you get your yarn onto your needles to start off with. So I'm going to show you that and we'll go from there. And don't worry if you miss something. I will probably show you a couple of times in a row so you can just get a hang of it. So this is a little bit of a, here's me, a little bit of an over the shoulder video. And I live in the city and I'm outside. So I apologize if you hear like a train or something over my shoulder. It's, life in the city. So here I have my materials. I have Lion Brand Wool Ease Thick and Quick in the colorway, let's see, pumpkin. This is a great yarn if you're starting to learn how to knit because it's nice and chunky, so you get to make a scarf or whatever you're going to make really, really quick. And because it's so thick, it's really easy to see mistakes too. So I'm going to do that. And the needles that I have are, I love that they're marked on here. They are size 11s. They're 8mm needles. The size recommended for this yarn is 13s, but this is what I have on hand. And if you look, they're kind of smaller than normal knit needles. They're pretty short, which I love because that means that I don't have giant honking knitting needles, kind of like sitting on my lap. So the first thing you're going to do, and like I said, this is a video for crocheters, so I assume that you know how to make a slip knot. So the first thing you're going to do is make your slip knot. This is how I make mine. And then you're just going to stick, well, let's make the slip knot first. And then just stick your needle through it, like so. Now, when you are a crocheter, if you normally hold your hook in your right hand, put the needle with the yarn into your left hand. Because if you're right-handed, you're still going to use your right hand to do the majority of your knitting. So just like you're crocheting, you're going to put your yarn over your left hand if you're right-handed, and you're going to have the needle that you're working with in your right hand. So when I hold my yarn, I loop it over my index finger, under the middle, over the ring, and kind of catch it with my pinky. However you normally hold your yarn for crocheting is a totally fine and acceptable way for you to hold your yarn. So what you're going to do first, once you have the loop already on the needle, is you're going to take the second knitting needle and put it from bottom to top right through that loop and make a little X. Some people like to hold this extra tail coming down. I just kind of leave it alone because you don't need it. So you've made your X, and then with your index finger, just throw that yarn real quick over the needle. Okay? So I'm going to show you that step again. You have your first loop on the left needle, and you've got your yarn looped over your finger. Take your new needle from bottom to top in the back of the loop, and then you just pop right over, and then use your index finger here to hold on to the yarn so it doesn't run away from you, and you're gonna dip. Okay? Let's do it again. Loop on the needle, put your needle in the back, pop, and dip. Needle in, pop, and dip. Okay? So now that you're comfortable with that, you have 2 loops here, and you're like, what do I do? Now there's yarn on both needles. Take the loop on this needle, and you just stick it right back over. Ta-da! You now have 2 loops on your left needle. So we're going to do it again. Put your knitting needle in the back of the top loop, pop, and dip. Now you've got 3 loops. Put this loop back over. Okay? This is called a knitted cast on. In knitting, you have to get your loops, as many loops as you're going to work with, down the needle before you start making rows. So that's how it's a little bit different than crochet. You have to keep as many loops as you're going to use on the needle back and forth. So I'm going to do that a couple more times so you guys can see this. In, pop, and dip. Back over. You can pull it a little bit tight. Don't worry too much about tightness. Just like crocheting, you do have to worry about tension eventually, but it's something that'll kind of just work itself out as you go. So for right now, concentrate on getting the motions right and concentrate on just getting yourself used to doing the steps over and over again. So in, pop, dip, back on. In, pop, dip, back on. In, pop, dip, back on. It's kind of like a little dance. In, pop, dip, back on. In, pop, dip, back on. Let me count how many I have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I'm going to keep doing this until I have, I don't know, maybe about 15 to 20, if we're going to do a scarf. Which you don't have to, because as you know from crocheting, everybody wants you to make a scarf as your first project. They're like, here, just knit for 1.5 miles, or just crochet for 1.5 miles, and then you'll have a scarf. And halfway through you get bored and you're like, oh my gosh, I want to make something else, but I have to finish this. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. That's fine. We can do that. So this is what it should look like when you have finished your first, well, it's not even first row, it's a cast on row. So you have all these nice little loops just lined up. Now here's the cool part. We're going to do a knit stitch next, and you've actually already done the knit stitch because this is called a knitted cast on. So you're going to do the same motion. You're going to do your in, pop, and dip. But instead of putting this loop back onto your left needle, you're just going to scooch this one off the top. So now you're transferring your stitches from left to right. So in, pop, dip, remove. In, pop, dip, remove. In, pop, dip, remove. You see that? I'm going to do it really slowly a couple times just in case, because I think I went really fast there. In, focus camera, pop, dip. So you've got the 2 new stitches on here. You are always taking the old one off the left needle. See? So you basically just made a new loop out of the old one. Same thing. In, pop, dip, remove. Okay? So you're just doing the same motion over and over and over again. This is kind of like the single crochet of knitting. If all you ever learned was just to do this straight across, back and forwards, you could totally make stuff and you would be just fine. And with this, just being able to do this, you can literally say that you know how to knit and you are a knitter, which is awesome. Okay, so now your left needle is empty and you have all your stitches on your right needle. What do you do now? You switch. The needle with the stitches goes back in your left hand and the empty needle goes into your right hand. And that is the equivalent of turning your work. When you're crocheting, you're just turning your work. So this is what the back of a knitting stitch looks like. Focus camera, there we go. This is what the back of a knitting stitch looks like. It has all of these bumps on here. But that doesn't matter because you're still gonna do the same thing. Get your hand ready. Get your needle in your left hand with all the stitches, and your empty needle in your right hand. Insert, pop, dip, remove. Insert, pop, dip, remove. And I do this to help get the stitch off. So like, look, insert, pop, dip. And the way I get only this needle, this loop off the left needle is I stick my finger on here and pull towards my finger. So my left hand is able to hold all the rest of the stitches while I pull only the one I want off the needle. I'll show you again. Insert, pop, dip, remove. See how my left hand here is holding all of the rest of the stitches? So insert, pop, dip, remove. Insert, pop, dip, remove. Okay? And this is called a garter stitch. When all that you do is you do a knit stitch, which is what we're doing. When you do a knit stitch, for every single stitch, every single row, it is called a garter stitch. And like I said, this is kind of the single crochet of the knitting world. So now, when I transfer my needle with my stitches back to my left hand, you can see there's going to be a row of bumps facing me again, which is exactly what is supposed to be there. And that's just how it's supposed to look. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause my video and I'll be back in a second. It won't be paused to you. It will only be paused to me. And I'm going to knit a couple of rows and then I'm going to teach you how to do what's called binding off or casting off, which is how you finish and you get all of these loops off the needle without destroying your work and having loose stitches everywhere. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I've done a couple more rows here. I was gonna do more, but I'm in Philadelphia and it's like 30 degrees outside and I can barely feel my fingers right now. So I'm just gonna show you guys how to bind off before I go inside and warm up. So what you're gonna do, this is called a knitted cast off or a knitted bind off. You're gonna do your same stitch. Insert, pop, dip, off, right? And you're like, Ruth, I know this. This is what you've been showing me. But wait. Do a second one. Insert, pop, dip, off. So now you have 2 stitches on your new needle. Watch this fancy trickery. Take the tip of your left needle and put it into the bottom one here, and you're just going to lift it over. Okay? I'm going to show you again. Insert, pop, dip, off. Now you're going to lift this stitch over that one. Ready? Just lift it right on over. Oh look, now you only have 1 stitch left on your right needle. Insert, pop, dip, and off. Lift over. insert, pop, dip, off, lift, over. And so what this does is you see how it looks like the top of crocheting there? It's because it basically is. You're basically, how do I explain this? You're kind of doing a single crochet with stitches that are already, with loops that are already live. So you're going to keep doing this until you get all the way to the end, which is what I'm going to show you. And I just realized that I forgot to bring scissors out here, which is not helpful to anybody, but that's okay because I will just think of another way to show you this. And of course, this is just a little sample. This is obviously not a scarf. It's not a project. You can keep going for as long as you want. And this is about 5 or 6 rows. And you can see in my hand, it's already a decent sized piece of material. So if you wanted to make a scarf, you could do one pretty quickly. All right, so here I am. I have 4 stitches left. 1, 2, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now you are left just like crocheting. Fancy that. You have your work with 1 loop and your yarn left over. So just like when you crochet, you are going to, well, like I said, I don't have needles, but just like crocheting, you're just going to pull your tail through the loop. So let me I'm going to pretend that my skein of yarn is a cut piece of yarn, because obviously it's not, but yoink, it wants to be a yarn tail. And just like crocheting, there you are, fastened off. So now you have learned how to do a knitted cast on, do a knit stitch, which is a garter stitch, and do a knitted bind off or cast off. Please comment below if you have questions. I would love to answer them for you. Or if this made a whole lot of sense to you, please tell me, and I will keep doing videos in this series so I can teach you other stitches like purling and cabling and lace, all kinds of fun stuff that you really don't need to be intimidated by, and crocheters can become knitters too. I hope this helped. Have fun, guys.